Black baseball history, trying to get my light adjusted here. And today, I guess, is going to be a pretty special day because I was about three people away from 500 subscribers. So I'm looking forward to that and passing that threshold. So just want to thank everyone for joining today. Today is going to be our January 11th. 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. If you've been following me here, you know what I do is give you historic facts that happened through the ages related to African American baseball players. So if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and subscribe. Be that 500th person. Go ahead and subscribe here. And we'll just keep this rolling. It's a conversation that we started back in July, and we're just keeping it rolling and keeping it going here as long as you're interested. So let us go ahead and get started, okay? So we're going to start with something that happened on January 11th, 1925, okay? And let's see, this is out in California. So although they picked up 17 hits, the St. Louis Stars lost to the Pasadena Merchants by a 7-5 score. Just imagine you get 17 hits and you lose, right? And this was at Los Angeles. They had a park out there called Goodyear Park. So they played in that California park. Fred Bell, the brother of James Cool Papa Bell, started the game as a pitcher. And you probably heard of Fred Bell before. I've talked about him way back. If you go look at some of my really first broadcasts, I think the first 4 broadcasts I ever did were on James Cool Papa Bell and my conversations with him. So I really went deep on that. Anyway, so his brother was pitching, didn't do that well in that particular game. I remember talking to Cool Papa, and he said his brother got into a salary dispute with the Detroit Stars, and so he left baseball and ended up going to be a garbage man. Yeah, so times were tough back then. So anyway, that was Fred Bell. He pitched a 1 2/3 inning, and then a guy named George Gurley came and pitched a 7 1/3 inning. And of course, they lost that game. Dewey Creasy and Neil Pullen both logged 3 hits each. Dewey Creasy out of Dallas, Texas. Neil Pullen was a guy out on the West Coast, and he didn't play very long in the Negro National League, but when they went out to the coast, he would usually join the team out in Los Angeles. And one of Creasy's hits was a triple. And I remember talking in detail with George Giles about Dewey Creasy. He said his nickname for Creasy was Boot Nose, and he was on the team. Now Creasy had started off, believe it or not, with the Kansas City Monarchs, second team in 1923. And a lot of people don't know that the Monarchs had a second team in 1923, and they left Texas, and the team split up. And Creasy was with the second team. And over the years, if you look at my book, The Negro Baseball Leagues of Photographic History, you will see a picture I have that came from the Ding Motho collection where he and Creasy are standing next to each other. So that is Creasy. Of course, Creasy goes on to play for the St. Louis Stars. And then he goes on and has a lengthy career with the Philadelphia Stars, too, in what they call at that particular time was the Negro National League. So he played in both Negro National Leagues, the Negro National League West and the Negro National League East. And somebody's joining me here. There's a guy named Mike here. Hey, Mike, let me know where you're joining from. I appreciate that. And I always like to know where people are joining from because I may have been there before. All right. So that was January 11th, 1925, talking about a Winter League game. Let's go to another one. January 11th, 1933. In the first ever appearance in Nashville to play at Bethlehem Gymnasium. How about this? And with a decisive 38-28 win over Fisk University of Nashville, Tennessee, the New York Wrens, the Eastern African American basketball champions of the world, who featured some outstanding players like Clarence Fats Jenkins and also Bill Yancey. How about this? Jenkins scored 8 of those points, 38 points, and Yancey scored 4 of those points. And of course, both Jenkins is an outfielder with the New York Black Yankees, and Yancey is the shortstop for New York Black Yankees. Of course, they played basketball in the offseason, and both of them were very good. And they helped not only the New York Black Yankees become famous, but the New York Rens, who were a world championship competitor in basketball. So I don't know how much you know about the New York Rens, but you can't talk about the Rens without mentioning the Negro Leagues. All right. Somebody says, somebody said, I don't know why you want me to say your full name. How about telling me where you're from? That's what I'd like to know. All right. And that's what a lot of people would like to know. All right. So here we go. Let's see. We're going to go to let's see. Let's go. Oh, okay. Well, let me finish up on this one. Of course, when they played with the New York Black Yankees, the manager for that team was George Scales. Okay, George Scales, great second baseman. And I talk about this all the time. In Cooperstown, there is no legitimate Negro League second baseman has ever been enshrined in Cooperstown, and so not many have come up on the ballot either from year to year. But George Scales has been the latest one to come up on the ballot. Of course, he's not in, but he was a great manager, great player. Played on the powerful 1931 Homestead Grays, led the New York Black Yankees for many years. He should be in there, as well as Newt Allen is another great one. Bingo DeMoss is another one. And I could probably go on and on, just mentioning some of the really outstanding Negro League players at second base that are getting no credibility at this time. So anyway, just want to let you know that these two men, in addition to playing basketball, also played baseball under manager George Scales, player manager George Scales. All right. Let's jump into a little modern Major League Baseball. All right. And this is modern Major League Baseball. You probably heard of this guy. You ever hear Lloyd McClendon? Lloyd McClendon. He was an 8-year National League player who was once traded for Tom Seaver. Yeah, I didn't know that. He was born on this date, January 11, 1959, in Gary, Indiana. You ever been to Gary, Indiana, right outside Chicago? I have been to Gary, Indiana. I used to be a musician, and one of the guys in our band, Edward Prothrow, he was from Gary, Indiana, so we had to stop in Gary, Indiana, so he could visit his folks, and never played there, but of course, you know the Jackson 5 come from Gary, Indiana. I don't know if you can get much more famous than that. So anyway, Gary produced some baseball players too. I tell you another guy that had Gary, Indiana connection. That would be Neil Robinson, and Johnny Robinson had Gary, Indiana connections as well. So anyway, yeah, so McClendon was born there. And during the 1992 National League Championship Series between the Pittsburgh Pirates and Atlanta Braves, McClendon had one of the hottest streaks in postseason history. And he batted an incredible 727, collecting 8 hits and 11 at-bats over the 5 games, which still stands as a National League Championship Series record for the highest batting average in a single postseason series. Of course, he batted .625 in 3 seasons of postseason play, and then that's something to celebrate, right? Okay, and I see you're from Tennessee. Let me tell you something about Tennessee. There's some great ball players from Tennessee. I used to like to talk about Bruce Petway. Bruce Petway, I think, once again, is an outstanding player who should be in Cooperstown. When you compare him to the catchers from his same period that played in the National American League, you're going to find out that Bruce Petway is still tops. And I'm going to do more on Petway as I begin to talk about him. Now, if you want to talk about a ball player who was born in Alabama but played most of his career with Memphis in the Negro Leagues, then you want to talk about Larry Brown, who would also be famous in Tennessee baseball, not because he's born there, but because he played there. And so, yeah, those are 2 catchers that I think need recognition. And then, of course, one of the outstanding players, Bill Wright. Bill Wright had Tennessee connections, and he was an outstanding player too. And there are going to be lots more. I just want to touch on just a few of those. And of course, Tennessee State produced some amazing people. I remember as a kid, I followed the Chiefs, and I would go down to the Kansas City Chiefs football club where they were working out. And I remember Nolan Smith, who had gone to Tennessee State. He would give me a ride home in his car sometimes. So he dropped me off right up the street from the training center over my sister's house. And so I actually have great connections to Tennessee State. And of course, Grady Orange, who played for the Kansas City Monarchs, played for Detroit Stars, in the Negro National League. He went to Meharry Medical College, and I think he was became a dentist. But yeah, he played, and he was a second baseman too. Speaking of second baseman, and that was Grady Orange. So lots of people with Tennessee connections. And so anyway, I'm glad that you're joining. Hopefully, you're still here. All right. Okay, and let's go. We're going to go to another one. How about this one? January 11th, 1968. Well, so we've been covered a lot. We covered a lot of territory. We didn't come from 1925 to 1968. This one you'll find interesting. The National League Reds traded away Dick Simpson to the National League Cardinals for outfielder Alex Johnson, who finished fourth that year, the year after the trade, with a 312 batting average. Now, Simpson didn't do nearly as well. But if you remember, Johnson went on to win the American League batting title in 1970 with the then California Angels, which are now the Anaheim Angels now. And that same year, okay, now so you got Johnson playing wonderful, batting 312, and then Simpson played in 26 games for the Cardinals, batted 232, and then he was traded to Houston, to the Houston Astros in June. So he didn't finish that year. So a pretty lopsided trade that Dick Simpson was involved in. However, that wasn't the first lopsided trade he was involved in. You may recall that on December the 9th, 1965, the Cincinnati Reds traded Hall of Fame outfielder Frank Robinson to the Baltimore Orioles for Milt Pappas, Dick Balscom, I'm going to correct that, I'm saying that, and Dick Simpson again. And when they traded Robinson, Bill DeWitt, the secretary of the, or president of the Reds, however you want to call him, he said that he described Robinson as a washed up 30-year-old, an old 30-year-old. Of course, you know what happened. Frank Robinson goes to the American League. I think he won the Triple Crown that year. And of course, the Orioles go to the World Series, and he turned it out to be just a fabulous player. So that was Frank Robinson. So Dick Simpson was involved in two pretty lopsided trades. And so I would make him a footnote in history. And both of Dick Simpson and Frank Robinson are African-American players. All right. And Milt Pappas didn't do that well either. So, and that used to be a little trivia question that we would have from time to time when I was a kid. So we're going to finish up with one that January 11th, 2016. And by the way, I did interview Frank Robinson on numerous occasions, and but I also interviewed this guy, and I remember his saying. This is Monty Irvin. He passed away on January 11th, 2016. I remember when I was talking to Monty Irvin. Well, he could tell you some stories. Now he could tell you about all the crooked stuff going on in Major League Baseball, and he used to always have a line. He said, "You can write the hell out of it after I'm gone." So I still have some things I need to write that Monty told me about, and I'm probably gonna have to write the hell out of it now that he's gone. But anyway, Monty Irvin died on this date in Houston, Texas, and he played in the Negro Leagues for the Newark Eagles starting in 1940, and later in the National League with the New York Giants. He is a member of the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. You probably know that if you're a baseball fan. And in his youth, he played four sports at Orange High School in New Jersey, and Orange, New Jersey. And he won an incredible, how about this, 16 varsity letters. I don't know if kids can do that these days because they have to stay with one sport. So you don't, unless it's a really small school, a lot of kids can't play all four sports anymore. And some of the sports don't, I mean, if you're playing baseball, then you're not going to be able to play track and field because it's in the same season. So, and occasionally I was traveling through Illinois. This was probably about 3 or 4 years back. And it was like, maybe like October or November or something like that. And I stopped in a Kentucky Fried Chicken just to grab a bite to eat. And there was a baseball team in there. And they were a high school baseball team. And in some parts of Illinois, I don't know if they do this all over the country, because they didn't have enough players for football, they had fall high school baseball. So they were actually playing baseball instead of football because of the number of students. I mean, that might be wise for some schools to try that around here in Kansas City as well. But yeah, so I had a great conversation with them, and they were telling me their whole history of their team. Just amazing who you meet when you're traveling. If you'll sit down and take the time to talk to people, people love to chat about what they're doing. And by the way, guys, if you're joining me, let me know where you're joining from. I had one guy in here from Tennessee, but let me know if you want to give your city, the specific city, not the state. That's okay as well. And then also, if you like what I'm doing here, go ahead and subscribe, guys. I'm pushing up on 500. I would love to hit that number today and get ready to go to work on 600 because we've got some more exciting things that I'm going to be talking about. Okay, so that's Monty Irvin, and how about he married a lady named Dorinda D. She went by D, and of course he was married to her for 67 years until his death in 2016. And what's interesting, they talk about these players in great detail and their careers, their numbers, and what they achieved. But the thing you don't hear about the most is some of these guys who were married for 50, 60 years. And I can think of a number of them that played in the Negro League that had long marriages that is just not getting talked about. And this is one aspect of not knowing the African American culture and just listening what you wouldn't think that these people did not exist. But yeah, there were families like this all over my community when I was growing up. And so that was not uncommon to see people who were married 50 plus years. And so Monty Irvin would be one of those people who played in baseball and was married quite a long time. You think about 67 years, guys. This guy passed 50 years by 17 years. And most people, if you can get to 50 years marriage, right? How about this? Well, he passed that by 17 years. Just imagine that. That was an achievement by itself. Oh, Monty Irvin, had a great chance to interview him on several occasions, and I do have several things autographed by him, mostly photographs. As I would run into him at old timers games, he would come down to the Negro Leagues Museum, and so things like that. So anyway, this is kind of a brief broadcast tonight. Usually I try to go about 20 minutes, but it's Sunday. I know people watching football. I'll probably come in tomorrow with another a football or either basketball related story compared to the Negro League athletes, who were participating in that. A lot of multi-sport, multi-talented players that you need to know about. So this is Phil Dixon, and I'm just signing out for now, but I want to thank everybody who's been supportive of these broadcasts from the very beginning. And you get to hear about all these people I interviewed over the years. Sometimes it's amazing that God blessed me the way that he did for me to be able to interview so many people. So I want to thank you all for your support, and we're going to have a great year in 2026. So keep hanging in there and keep coming back for more, and more. This is Phil Dixon, and this is the January 11th, 2026 edition of This Day in Black Baseball History.